I'm filthy, don't touch me.
Let me see. There's beauty here.
The whole town called her filthy. But when the cowboy touched her hair, he didn't see dirt. He saw something no one else ever did, and what happened next silenced the entire street. The Texas wind of 1879 did not forgive weakness, and it certainly did not forgive dirt, and the girl standing at the edge of Red Willow Town wore both like armor. Her dress hung in torn layers, stiff with trailed dust. Her boots were split at the seams, and her hair, once the color of summer wheat, clung to her face in matted strands, as though even it had given up on being seen, and when the townsfolk passed her they did so with narrowed eyes and curled lips, whispering that she was trouble, that she smelled like the stockyards, that she had the look of someone who'd been sleeping under wagons and stealing scraps. But none of them noticed the way she held herself, back straight despite hunger, chin high despite shame, as if daring the world to strike her first, and when the tall cowboy dismounted near the general store that morning, boots thudding into dust, hat shadowing a scar across his jaw, he noticed not the grime, not the tattered hem, but the way her hands trembled when a child pointed at her and laughed, and when he stepped closer she recoiled like a cornered mustang and spat the words through cracked lips. "I'm filthy, don't touch me," as though touch itself were a cruelty she had long ago learned to survive without. Part 2. He did not answer her right away, and that unsettled her more than insult would have, because men usually answered with laughter or cruelty, not silence. He simply studied her the way he might study a skittish horse, not with dominance but with patience, and when he finally spoke his voice was low and steady as river rock, telling her that dust washes off and that being unkind is the only stain that sticks. But she shook her head fiercely because she knew what she'd heard whispered behind her back, drifter, stray, gutter girl, and she believed it, believed that dirt could sink into skin and stay there forever. The cowboy reached slowly into his saddlebag and drew out a canteen, offering it without stepping too close, and when she refused he set it on the ground between them like a peace treaty, and that simple gesture, no grabbing, no forcing, cracked something inside her harder than any shove ever had. By sundown, word had spread that the Lone Star ranch hand had taken interest in the town's stray, and wagers were whispered that he'd grow tired of her stink by morning, but he returned instead with a brush wrapped in cloth, and a quiet resolve that made even the saloon doors hush when he passed. He found her behind the livery stable, trying to comb her hair with her fingers, wincing when knots resisted. And when she saw him she braced for mockery, yet he only knelt a short distance away and unwrapped the brush carefully, saying nothing grand, nothing heroic, just asking if she would allow him to help. And again she muttered that she was filthy, and that he would regret touching her, and this time he stepped forward, slow and steady, and began brushing the outermost strands without flinching, and when the bristles pulled through the first stubborn knot she gasped. Not from pain, but from the unfamiliar gentleness of it. The next morning revealed what twilight had hidden. Beneath the grime were cheekbones sharp with hunger, eyes the blue of a storm breaking over prairie grass, and a scar at her temple that spoke of something harsher than the road. And as he worked the brush through her hair in patient strokes, she confessed in broken fragments that she had once traveled west with family who never made it past the fever season, that she had learned quickly how towns look at girls alone, that dirt became safer than beauty because beauty invited danger. He listened without interruption, each careful pass of the brush undoing not just tangles but years of silence. And when the townspeople gathered at a distance pretending to busy themselves with crates and barrels, they saw not a spectacle, but something uncomfortable, kindness without agenda, and it forced them to reconsider the story they had written about her. The cowboy brought water heated over his campfire and set a basin on an overturned crate, and though she trembled at the thought of stepping into the open, where eyes could judge her transformation, he positioned himself between her and the street, broad shoulders blocking stairs, as she dipped a cloth into the water, and began to wipe away the caked layers of trail and time. With each stroke her skin emerged pale and sun-kissed rather than soiled, freckles scattering across her nose like forgotten stars. And when she finally looked up at him as if asking whether he saw disappointment, he surprised her by smiling, not at her beauty, but at her relief, and that was the moment she understood he was not rescuing her to own her, nor polishing her to display her, but simply reminding her that she had always been more than the names thrown at her. Trouble, however, does not enjoy losing its grip, and by evening 2 rough men from the saloon swaggered near, muttering that the town had been just fine before strays started expecting charity, and the girl stiffened instantly, instinct pulling her back toward invisibility. Yet the cowboy rose with a quiet authority that needed no drawn gun, telling them plainly that no one in Texas owned dignity, and that anyone who tried to take it would answer to him. There was no brawl, only a long stare, down beneath a bleeding sunset until the men backed away grumbling. And for the first time since her family's wagon broke down years before, she stood in the open street without lowering her eyes. Days turned into a week, and the transformation became less about soap and more about spirit. She began helping at the ranch, learning to saddle horses and mend fences, laughter replacing suspicion in slow, fragile increments. And though the town still watched, they now saw strength where they had once seen squalor. One afternoon, as wind swept through the pasture, she caught her reflection in a water trough, clean hair braided neatly, skin sun-warmed rather than masked in dirt, and instead of pride she felt fear, because beauty had once meant vulnerability, and she confessed that to him in a whisper, telling him she feared the world would try to take it again. He set aside his tools and faced her fully, telling her that what he saw the first day had not been beauty waiting to be revealed, but courage fighting to survive, and that courage could not be stolen by gossip or cruelty. He reminded her that dirt had been her shield, but it had never been her identity, and that strength lies not in hiding from harm, but in choosing to stand despite it. And as he spoke, she realized the brush in his hand, that first evening had not uncovered beauty, it had uncovered belief that she was worth touching gently, worth defending openly, worth seeing clearly. On a clear Texas morning in late autumn, she walked beside him into town not as a shadow but as herself, boots still worn but polished, chin still high but softened by hope, and when a little girl dropped her basket of apples, she knelt to help gather them without hesitation, smiling when sticky fingers grasped hers. The townsfolk noticed something then: that dust had once hidden, not flawless skin, not delicate features, but resilience glowing brighter than any mirror could capture, and as she rose, she caught his eye across the street, gratitude passing between them without words, because the true miracle had never been the washing of dirt or the brushing of hair, but the simple, stubborn refusal to let a human soul believe it was unworthy of kindness. And long after the wind swept new dust across Red Willow, the story remained, not of a filthy girl made beautiful, but of a brave heart finally allowed to shine.